Okay, so by the looks of it, this is designed to link up to this hole here, and then attach round under there. Obviously that's too big, it's actually too short when the grip's connected. It's too short to reach, and this brake lever gets in the way here of this guard, so I'll need a bit of a wedge there somehow. So we'll have to see. Okay, so basically what I've got to have to do is make a spacer between the end of the guard and the handlebar bar end, but these useless plastic bar ends of what they supplied in the bag, which I've tested and are actually, when in line with the handlebars, still too small, like the original ones that are on there. They're a little bit thicker, but there's still not as much clearance for the lever to work properly without touching the inside of the guard. So they are virtually, for me on the Lexmoto XTRS anyway, very useless, you could say. Now what they will be good for is, what I'm going to have to do is make a spacer between the bar end that's there and the guard itself to bring it out a little bit more, and they actually are perfect for that because there's the hole exactly the same diameter for the screw already drilled on there. And what you're in essence going to have to do is saw it off right at the very join there onto there. Now you put that in a vise and saw it. Now I've, off the top of my head, it's indoctrined into me, I've put some soft jaws in on there. Obviously these soft jaws aren't for this vise because you can see they're a little bit bigger. I actually made these some years ago. As you can tell, there's a bit of rust on there. They need a bit of a copper brushing, but if you haven't got any of them, you don't even really need to put a rag in the jaws to make it soft, because in essence you can just chew that up in a normal pair of jaws, because you're going to chuck it away anyway. It's just put into my head, the engineering side of the things, that if you're putting something softer than something, you need some protective jaws in there. So I've just done that, but you don't really need to because you're throwing it away anyway, so don't worry about scratching that up. We've realised that the one drilled hole at the front of the guard is for the bracket after all, and that bracket is supposed to, you take the nut off the big screw that goes through your where your brake lever pivots, where that connects to the casting. You take the screw off, slide the bracket over the screw, and then put the nut back on and tighten that on, and then that's what holds it at that end. However, the bracket is way too small, so some of the aluminium strip, that you could use steel if you want, but I already had some of that aluminium strip left over from making those lights, the extra lights for the bike, that I decided to use some of that. For the minute, to start off with, I just went up there and checked it by hand and eye at about 9.5 centimeters, or 95 mil. And cut that off for the minute. Obviously I'll do 2 off of them because I need a bracket for each end, and I'll probably put both pieces together with a clamp both pieces together, and then cut any, because they're going to need to be a little bit thinner than this, so you know, it'll probably be about that much thinner, about that much off the end. And obviously both need to be exactly the same, so it's best if you clamp both pieces together and then and then you can cut them. You don't have to, obviously you can measure them or make sure they measure the same measurement, but it's easier to do things that way. Then what I'll do is I picked up some, and I'm glad I did pick them up, a milling drill bit set. And it doesn't matter if you haven't got them, you've only got normal drills. You'll just have to make sure you get the hole bang on accurate either end for your bracket to go onto your brake lever pivot, and the other end to go onto your bracket guard itself, the hole on the guard that's been pre-drilled itself. You will also have to probably get a file and go over the pieces, put a little curve on them, or just take the sharp corners off on either end, because otherwise you will ease round by your hands, and you will catch yourself. Even if you're just walking around by it, you might catch yourself in the hip and cut yourself if you don't watch out. That'll also give me a good chance to review these Rolson mid-sized files that I picked up a couple of months back now. I haven't even opened them up yet because I haven't got a chance to do so. I snapped one of my other mid-sized files when I used it to pry something open, even though I got loads of bleeding screwdrivers. Yet I was lazy and used that and broke it. So that's basically it. So basically, if you want to use the brackets on the Lexmoto XTRS, you can use them, but you're going to have to do a bit of alterations to get them to fit yourself. Luckily, the spacers are actually included in the backup. Those useless bar ends are actually, well, they are useless for our bike even used properly, as they expect you to use them, but they do come in handy if you cut them off to use the end as a spacer. And now another good point is the long screw that come with it. The thread actually does fit the nut that is in the bar ends at the moment. I know that because they fit the original ones that I took off, so they fit the original thread as well if you've still got the original ones on there. I know that the thread was exactly the same size between the gold ones and the original ones from changing them over before, so I know it's exactly the same. And it is long. It is a much longer screw, so you are pretty much likely going to have to use that one, because you've got the spacer now on there as well, which makes it even thicker. The only thing that bothers me about that is it's only threaded partially down the way of the length of the shaft on that screw, so it's not all the way like the screws are that we've got in the original bar ends and the bar ends that I swapped out for. So there may still be a point where I may have to go onto eBay or something and find some in the same thread length, the same thread size, but in the same length, but with the thread that goes all the way down to the end. I'm hoping not, but that might still be a possibility at this point. Again, what these milling drill bits will allow me to do, obviously there's a normal drill tip, and then it's got like a vertical milling cutter, if you want to put it like that, down the shaft of the bit, and that will allow me to then cut a slot in a straight line along there. So if I cut a slot in there, then if I'm a little bit out and I'm a little bit there, I can adjust it and set it on each side there, and I don't have to be exactly bang on with the not only with the drill hole points, but with the length of it as well, actually, because this was at 95mm was a approximation, because I went out there with the bracket and held it there and held it up to the pivot point and to the bracket itself, and the distance was around 95mm. But the only trouble is when you've actually got it all hooked up and the spacer and everything all in there, then it might be ever so slightly different. in size, so that just gives me a little bit to play with. And if I want to trim it down afterwards, of course I can get the hacksaw and file back out and trim it down. If I don't want to, and it's only a tiny, you know, a couple of millimeters or whatever over one end, because there's a slot on there, then it might not really matter, because they'll be connected by the slots and I can just adjust it and move it. So I'll pick these ones up from Lidl's, but I'm sure you'll be able to pick some milling drill bits up on eBay or online. They wouldn't be that expensive. You can get them now for a few pounds. If you've actually got a milling machine, or you can borrow a milling machine at work, obviously you can do that kind of job on there with a slot mill, or you could just put if you can fit a slot, if you've got a slot mill big enough for a vertical miller to go into your mains drill, a slot mill could pretty much do the job as well. Alright, I just want to say, when you've got your ends cut off that you're going to use for your spacer, if you just take a Stanley knife or a craft knife with a sharp blade like a scalpel or something, and it'll leave some edges that are sharp around there and around by where the screw is as well. If you can just obviously take it and just run it around the edge like that, and take off any like plastic burring off the edge there to make it smooth. You can also use a file or a bit of sandpaper on a block, and just if you've cut it and it's too high, mine's not that bad, it's just a bit of the plastic burring sticking up. Mine's cut relatively neatly and flat, but if you have cut it and there's a little bit sticking up, obviously you can file that back down or sand that back down. You want it flat, because obviously that's going in between the handguard itself and the bar end that's on there, so you want it as flat as you can possibly get it.